This is the last portrait of Marie Antoinette, and it is an unfinished portrait. It is when she was held prisoner at the Tuileries Palace, and they never finished it.
That's incredible.
So to be able to see this is really an important moment. Up close. Look, we're this close.
So when this was done when she was being held prisoner?
Yes, it was. Yeah. Held against her will.
Why wasn't it finished?
Who knows? There was an escape plan, so that may have been part of why it wasn't finished.
Drama and mystery.
The artist could have easily finished it, so we don't know why they didn't. They got the most important part. So it's just it's wonderful to be able to be up close.
It's incredible. Okay, virtual conventioneers, we're going in. We're here in Paris, France at the Marie Antoinette exhibit.
Metamorphoses of Marie Antoinette's image. And there's no image that's really been as maligned as hers. So we're going to see.
We're going to go find out.
Most important documents having to do with the style life of Marie Antoinette. This is her book that she would choose to. Those are fabric samples, and she would pick the sample that she would wear that day. So this is from a short period of time. This is the only known book of its kind that has survived. So it's an amazing document of what the fabrics that she was wearing. They are not that elaborate, by the way. They're very simple silks. But this is a very, very special artifact. And then we also have these gloves that have survived. And they're like a blue kidskin glove with hand embroidery. But this is the real treasure of the exhibit. They do not let this out of their hands very often, so it's very, very special that we get to see this. This is a wonderful memorial to Madame Elizabeth. Madame Elizabeth was the sister of Louis, and she was a remarkable woman. She was in charge of the religious education of Marie Antoinette's children and also their education. And she was a remarkable, courageous woman. Robespierre really didn't want to guillotine her, but he really had to, and he was afraid that she would become a form of a saint, and that's exactly what happened. And across from his sister, here's Louis XVI, and this is his memorial. I think that history leaves out his position was hereditary. He didn't ask for it. He was born into it. You know, he really wasn't a bad guy. He was working very hard before the revolution to get the financial stability in France under control. But, you know, he wasn't a businessman. He was just a human caught in a terrible time. And, of course, for us as Americans, his backing of the American Revolution brought on their revolution, the financial strain of that. This is the little tiny cell that Marie Antoinette was kept. It would be Empress Eugenie, the wife of Napoleon III, who was a very big collector and fan of Marie Antoinette, who would create this memorial. It's a little watch. You can notice it's wallpaper, and the white dots are meant to be tears. Those are little tears. A lot of tears were shed here until Marie Antoinette said, "I have no more tears to shed." This is an amazing image of the final moments. This, I believe, is what Marie Antoinette was wearing when she, something very similar to this, she was wearing when she lost her life. Somehow she'd managed to save one chemise dress. This is basically a chemise dress. And to keep it clean, because she didn't want to go out looking like a beggar. So she managed to get one garment and then threw out that.
Now, are these ladies happy or sad over here?
Well, I think that they had to toe the line that they were happy, but not everyone agreed. So, politically, we think that, there's always those people that don't agree with you. Not everyone thought this was a good idea. But once it started, it couldn't be stopped. Well, these are some of the treasures of Marie Antoinette. Her chemise, her cap. We're on the other side of this exhibit because on the other side there's just throngs of people. But this is her actual chemise that she had when she was imprisoned. When you see it, it looks like she was quite large, but she was very small. This would all be gathered at the neckline, and you can see how that would all come in. So this is very almost like a nightshirt, but it's a chemise. And then we have one of her shoes that you can see. She had a fair-sized foot. And a nightcap. A recreation of one of Marie Antoinette's jailer's cells. It's pretty accurate, I would imagine, except it doesn't have the stench that it would in that time, and it doesn't have the cold dampness in this modern building. So this is where you could go and you could pay the jailer and you could give him a little bit of money, and he might let you just go look at the queen herself. That was something that she had to deal with on a daily basis as the onlookers gawking. This is what the image that when I think of Marie Antoinette as the Queen of France, this is the image that I think of. And there are many versions of this because remember, we didn't have photography, so you would have your painter make multiples. So this is one of a multiple of an original Leblanc painting. And I believe that this was the image that the Queen was finally satisfied with how she looked as far as a portrait. But you can see she had a beautiful face and lovely hands. Interesting to note, there's not that much jewelry on. Very, very little. There's a couple of bracelets and some pearls in her turban.
Well, it almost wouldn't work with a dress that ornate.
Yeah, you're like gilding the lily. Here's one of Marie Antoinette's fire screens from the Tuileries Palace. And it is amazing because it's all hand carved. But what I think is so spectacular, how it's beautifully painted. So the flowers are painted in a realistic fashion. Marie Antoinette was at the forefront of the latest decorative arts. I mean, whether she wanted to be or not, that was her position as the queen, which was to help sell products, whether it's cosmetics or lace or furniture. That's sometimes forgotten by the critics. And it took 50 years after the revolution for France to get back to where it was pre-revolution as leaders in that industry, providing furniture, jewels, lace, fashion, etc. So, I mean, this is just an example. I don't know before this that there was such a thing as the carving painted. But look at what I love is look at the little shafts of wheat carved into the screen.
And the little acorns, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. This is a pretty good depiction of probably how Marie Antoinette looked at the time of her imprisonment and going to prison and then ultimately being judged by a jury. Except that the clothes in this image are in very good condition. She had lived for 2 years in the same clothes, so these were very, very ratty. But the facial imagery is pretty darn good. And most likely the artist worked off of Madame Tussauds death mask of the Queen to get the facial features. But again, you can see, the clutching of the handkerchief. There's a lot of symbolism in this. But throughout the trial, she held herself together very, very queenly. And if it was a fair trial, she would have probably gotten off, except that it was already stacked against her. And here we have her porcelain set, which is Sèvres. It's a beautiful set, and I would imagine this is for champagne glasses. If you notice the areas, the champagne glasses will go into the ice and be chilled. It's just a lovely set and a wonderful tureen covered dish. A lot of her china has been dispersed around the world because after the revolution there was a two-year auctions that went on for over 2 years. So a lot of her pieces were bought up by the King of England or the Prince Regent of England and the nobility of England and America. There's some of her set in the White House.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yes, a lot of people don't know that. So, you can find as a collector pieces of her china, but the President of the Republic of France has a set of her china that they use.
And they use it. We're
Yes.
standing in front, but we're just gonna turn around so you guys can see this. This is a very famous portrait. It's huge.
It's one of the. I mean, this is a recreation, but it could be one of the famous portraits. But in this room, you have really one of the most famous, which is this. Okay, people, if this were real, there would be men with machine guns guarding it. This is a recreation of the necklace from the famous affair of the diamond necklace. This was never created for Marie Antoinette. It was created for Madame du Barry. And then when the king had died, they tried to sell it to Marie Antoinette, and she refused it twice because it is a bit much. I would imagine that's about 18 inches from the top. There's the necklace, and then this is the stomacher piece.
Oh, yes.
And it would be...
That's bling.
That's bling. That would be hundreds and hundreds of carats of diamonds. And it was a con job that, was perpetrated by the jewelers and ultimately started the French Revolution. The wonderful thing about coming to exhibits like this is we see things, for me anyways, I have never seen this portrait of the Queen, and she's in her hairstyle of, it was called coiffure enfant, which is like a child's hairstyle. And this is after she gave birth to her children. She started to lose her hair, so she did this shorter hairstyle. But she's dressed in like a Turkish harem girl costume. And she's got a little sash around, but she still has her robes. A little wonderful little ornament in her hair. But again, notice very little jewelry. No earrings, no necklace. She's just got her headgear and a little brooch. But it's wonderful to see this because I've never seen this before in any books or any publications.
This is incredible. Does it say nearby who is the artist?
Yes, it is by Alexander Koreshki. We need someone probably Polish to tell us the correct pronunciation.
How neat.
But it's a wonderful portrait. And it's probably a fancy dress ball that she's going to. This is a fantastic 19th century terracotta image of the Queen, fairly early 19th century. And you can see there's a wonder of her last words. Before her last words, the final last words, she was pushed out of her cell and she hit her head. And the man that pushed her apologized. And she said, "That's all right. My troubles are soon ending. Yours are just beginning." And those were actually, that was true. For her, her suffering was ending. The French people, it was just beginning. So this, I think, really captures that moment. And I think a lot of people were that had never really actually seen the Queen, didn't realize that she was born a princess. She knew how to handle herself. She was not going to be seen crying in public. She held herself as the Queen of France, died the Queen of France. A lot of people saw that, they admired her from that moment, or they also thought, oh, there she goes again, she's so haughty. But she faced her end with great dignity.
Great dignity.
And then here is a romantic version of that. She was taken away in basically a potato cart. She wasn't sitting next to a man like that. She was all by her. She faced this on her own. Just like she came to France on her own, she left France on her own. I think that they probably captured her face pretty nicely in this picture. It's a wonderful painting, by the way, but she just didn't have the comfort of a priest sitting next to her. She was by herself. What I can tell you in conclusion is nobody is all good or all bad. I think Marie Antoinette was a girl that came to a country far away from her own and tried to do the best she could. We could argue this until the end of time of who's right or who's wrong. The one thing I can tell you is that the citizens of France, they're out here at this exhibit looking at this. So the magic of Louis XVI's court and Marie Antoinette is still alive and well, and I don't think it will ever end. Robespierre, the mastermind of her demise, wanted to remove her from the history books, take her name and wipe it out. His actions had the opposite effect. In conclusion, this was a wonderful exhibit to see. It really wasn't celebrating the life of Marie Antoinette or mourning it. It was more about her image. The one big void in this exhibit is there was no image of her as a mother. Marie Antoinette only had one obligation to the people of France, and that was to deliver children, which she did, and she delivered 4 children. Only one survived the revolution, and we can learn a lot about Marie Antoinette as a mother just by looking at her surviving child, which was Maria Theresa. And Napoleon Bonaparte said, Maria Theresa is the only real man in France, meaning that she was tough and held her own. So I think in that sense, Marie Antoinette did a very good job with her children. And part of her disconnect at the early part of the revolution is that she lost 2 children that died. And that is very rarely even brought up in any historical context. Most parents that lose their children, it is a life-altering experience for them. She waited so long to have them that I'm sure that losing them was part of her disconnection of what was going on at that time. So that's my only thing that I see that was missing in her imagery. There wasn't the image of her as the loving mother. And, I don't know why they didn't have that as part of their exhibit, but perhaps it would create some form of sympathy with the French public. It's interesting that how they would look at things that us as Americans that have studied French history, that we know, a lot of people seemed like they were seeing it for the first time. So that's my commentary on this wonderful exhibit. It's well worth seeing. There's not a lot of original artifacts, but there's enough to make it worth coming to Paris, because Paris is always a good idea. Bye-bye, friends.